Reach high, aim high, and obtain. I'm going to be making what's referred to as oyster sauce, but this is mushroom-based oyster sauce, and it begins by having 2.5 cups of, I'm using filtered water. I'm also using dried oyster mushrooms. This actually started out as a big 1-pound bag, and as I use it, I use our vacuum sealer so that it maintains the freshness of the mushrooms. And so we're going to open these up, turn on our scale. There we go, get the bag open, zero it out. And what we're looking to get is to about 40 grams of these mushrooms. Oop. 41. Okay, exactly 40. Okay, so we're going to take these 40 of dehydrated oyster mushrooms, put it in our 2.5 cups of filtered water, and we're going to let this soak for 3 hours to begin the process of making our oyster sauce from mushrooms. And we can then use this oyster sauce that we're going to make to potentially do things like orange chicken, beef broccoli, vegetable lo mein, beef lo mein, different Oriental and fabulous Chinese dishes, and it's going to be delicious. We finished 3 hours worth of soaking here, so we're going to take this, put it in our, this was the oyster mushrooms in the water I filmed earlier, and we're putting that in our Vitamix blender. The reason we're doing that is we're actually going to turn this into a very thick, very fine mesh, almost like a cream is what it'll look like. It'll become very gelatinous and creamy because we're looking to make this almost like a pure liquid that we will actually use to make our oyster sauce. Let me put the lid on that, and we'll put that on the Vitamix. And then over here, I'm going to put this on medium-low heat with my New Wave. But before I do that, I want to let you know I've got a cup of my organic Monkfruit sweetener with the Allulose from the figs. It's all organic. It's keto, 0 glycemic index, and 0 calorie because of the ingredients, which means it's fabulous. And it's, of course, non-GMO. And it's a 1-to-1 ratio in
So how much is in here?
So it's 1 cup of that sugar. And then what we're going to do to that is we're going to add 6 tablespoons of water on top of this. So we're going to count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then what we're going to do is we're going to purposely swirl this because we want to get the sugar covered with the water. Because what we're going to do is by putting it on medium-low, we're going to leave it alone. And what's going to happen is this is the start of creating like a caramel sauce. And to do that, you have to leave it alone. And it usually takes about, well, traditional sugar, it's close to 13 minutes, but you're basically looking for it to turn very golden brown without touching it. And then once it gets into that state, we'll do next steps. So let's put it on medium-low, which on this device is 175 degrees for those of you that are curious. We'll hit start, and while that's going, I'm going to puree my mushrooms. On our specific Vitamix, what I'm doing is I'm putting it on the shake setting, which is this teardrop looking one, and then we're going to say start, and basically it runs a special cycle that I know will facilitate making sure it's fully blended, because we can't see inside the container when it's stainless steel, even though I love my stainless steel. Sadly, you can't see what's going inside unless you kind of, at least for me, get on my tiptoes and try and look inside through the lid. So we will run that cycle. and it will come out perfect. So we'll turn that off. So you can see what it looks like when I finish. It's basically, looks like baby food basically. And we'll save that for our container. Where is the, oh,
That's
yeah,
changing.
Yep, you can definitely see it's coming through and changing properties, which is what we want. So we're going to do 5 teaspoons of my arrowroot here. Oops, I unleveled that one. 2, 3, 4, and 5. There we go. We're going to add 4 tablespoons of water. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to stir this all together. And this actually makes sure that our sauce actually becomes thickened to the way that we need. And I'm doing as much prep in advance because you can see here over here, even though it's bubbling stuff, still leave it alone because we're looking for it to become a very golden brown type color. But we're doing all this prep work, so when this becomes, when the sugar and the water becomes the consistency color, see how it's coming down now? That's when you know you're getting ready to have really great results now. Okay, so you can see here how it's starting to turn a golden color. And this is where we have to be really, really careful, because as soon as it gets even just a little bit darker, turn off the heat, add the mushroom puree, followed by both the salt and the soy sauce. Doing this to see how it's doing. Okay, see how it's kind of adhering to my whisk? That's how I know too that it's turning into caramel, because when I do this, it's not really coming off unless I do a serious flick. That's another way, and I'm doing my best to not really disturb it. I'm just more checking to make sure we're still good, because this is a different sugar than what I normally use. And so I'm doing my best to be a little bit more attentive to it than I would typically be with standard. Okay, I think I'm seeing a reddish color starting to form around the outside. So I'm gonna turn this off. I'm also going to add our mushroom puree. And I've got my special tool here so I can get every little bit of it out. It's my special Vitamix silicone tool here, because it does have a unique form inside the Vitamix container, and this makes sure that I get it all. Add 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. We're using this soy sauce here. Now, there are recipes that say with the soy sauce to add a dark soy sauce. I have found, I think it's, and they admit that mainly it's for color. I see no reason to add dark soy sauce to make this happen, as I found just using the straight soy sauce and not addressing the need for dark soy sauce makes everything turn out just great. Add 3 tablespoons of salt. I prefer Himalayan salt. in this particular recipe. Turn the heat back on and whisk all the ingredients together well. Once it's occurred, taste the product. If you feel it needs more salt at this point, you can do so. The important thing to be aware of is to avoid exceeding 4 tablespoons of salt in total doing this recipe. And we're heating up the bottom because you want to make sure that the caramelization at the bottom and the mushrooms all get well incorporated. Okay. Give that a taste. Oh. Yep. Now, just so you know, you might want to start low on the salt, about half the amount I've done, and then increase it from there to potentially the 4 tablespoons that I did, because every person's taste buds is basically different, and you want it to be something that you're going to be comfortable eating as well as using as your base sauce. Now, the next thing we're going to do, and this is the big piece de resistance, is we're going to add our arrowroot with the water to this. Now, the reason that we do this is because as it cooks on here and we keep our whisk moving, is it starts to thicken. And as it thickens, it becomes more gelatinous and it brings all the flavors together, as well as when it comes time to make the Asian dishes that you may be interested in making, like myself. I love to make beef lo mein. My dad loves to make the orange chicken for us. Hint, hint to my dad. Because he makes a fabulous orange chicken. And he uses this as his base sauce. And because it's already got salt in it, in a lot of ways you wouldn't need to or want to add more salt to your dish potentially. But again, it's all about your palate and your preferences. That's the important part here, because you want it to be something that you're going to enjoy. But just realize this is simply the base ingredient to help make everything delicious. And this is homemade mushroom oyster sauce. Most oyster sauces that are actually used are actually made from oysters. So do be a little bit aware of that fact as to if it's mushroom based or if it's literally oyster based, because there is a huge difference between that. Even though the main approach is to have, I believe basically what this particular mushroom and approach does is it makes a natural, what's called MSG. And a lot of people can go out and actually buy just direct MSG, but it could be fake. And most MSGs I wouldn't consider healthy, even though they do enhance dishes. But this is actually plant-based because it's from a mushroom, MSG. And then we're using our really quality replacement 1-to-1 proportion sugar. So all that, and you can see how it's getting thicker. See that? How it's like you move the whisk and it's keeping that line in it. That is awesome. That's what I'm looking for. And you basically, when it gets to the thickness you want, you just stop. But I like a really thick oyster sauce because I found when it's thicker, we tend to like the flavor more. Almost, it's like a reduction sauce and all the flavors are enhanced. And it's just really, really delicious. Every time I make this and have it in the fridge, my dad goes for it for doing his steaks and just about everything, because the natural MSG and flavors in this makes the dishes just absolutely pop and turn out really good flavor-wise. I can always tell when he's used my oyster sauce because it has a very unique flavor to it. But just, you got to keep whisking. And like I said, I like it thicker, so I'll whisk it longer. But then what you would do once you get it to the thickness you want, you just turn off the heat, let it cool, and then you store it in the fridge. And then you have a container ready to go of your oyster sauce anytime you want to make a meal with this, which is fabulous. I absolutely love this stuff. The important thing though is you do have to keep your whisk constantly moving, because as you stir it, it gets more gelatinous, which means there's more potential for bubbles to occur, and you can see a few of them are occurring even as I'm whisking. See that? So you can see how thick it's getting on my whisk. It's not even coming off yet. I love that kind of sauce. So let's make sure how good it's doing. Okay, I think we can pretty much turn this off now. I want to see how thick it's getting. Oh, that's good thickness. Okay, let's turn it off. And then we're going to let this cool down. And once it cools down, I'll put it into a container and then we'll put it in the fridge. And then we have good quality oyster sauce anytime we have a recipe that calls for it.